I wonder if that's the most interesting thing that's going to happen to me this week. And it turns out it wasn't.
Yeah.
And Lucas, that was a fucking segue, wasn't it?
It was a segue indeed.
It was indeed. And you know what we're going to talk about here. But, I'm hoping, for the sake of the audience listening at home, you're, for some parts of this conversation, going to play just dumb.
Yeah.
Because you know what's going on here, and we can get right into it. 7 minutes into the podcast now, and for anyone who wants fun stories and interesting things about our week, you can turn away now, because we're going to be having a nice in-depth discussion about me being cancelled, and I hate that I'm using that word, but yeah. I think there's I can't. Sorry. I struggle to think of what else to describe what's happening right now as that, because that's just the common parlance used for it.
Of course, yeah. As far as I am aware, and as much as I hope, it's not actually going to be the case. There is attempts being made at the very least.
But we can get to that in a moment. But we want to start at the beginning, because that's usually the best way. And some clarification of what's going on here. So. A couple of, I think, months ago now, at the time of recording this, on June 17th, I was reached out to by a representative from Cracked.com, who I've talked about on the podcast before. I worked with 10 years ago now. It's where the beginnings of my writing career are. It helped inform the voice I've used online and now shaped and made my own since then, and is the reason I'm able to sit here doing this podcast and have a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Because the grounding that site provided me, I use that to build up, essentially, a career, a business now that I use to employ my friends like you, Lucas.
Yep.
So in a way, Fact Fiend owes its origins to Cracked. You owe, your job to Cracked. I owe my job to Cracked. Nisha owes her job to Cracked. Brad owes his job to Cracked. Because if it wasn't for that site giving me my start in the industry, I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and that representative from Cracked was talking about how the basically, the short version of this is Cracked was owned by one company, and it got bought out by another company who pivoted towards video. Video shit the bed. That company fired all of their video staff and a lot of their editorial staff. The site was basically deemed to be, if not a failure, just it's not making as much money as we anticipated. It's not worth the price we put into it for the return we're getting. Another company swooped in, bought it back. So it's now owned by a completely different company to the first two that owned it, and that company decided to once again invest in video, but just in a more reserved fashion.
Yeah, so the thing that people might have, a bit of a bad taste in the mouth about Cracked is pretty much gone now. That entire team behind making all those cuts and getting rid of, those talented people, they are not in charge anymore. They are gone.
No, it's a completely different company who hired this person who was reaching out to me. Well, I'm not going to name for reasons that become abundantly clear in a moment, but they reached out to me just informing me of the fact, we're trying to bring Cracked back. I'm currently running the video department. They've asked me to go out there and approach content creators who might want to work with us. I know you've written for Cracked in the past. I'm familiar with your work. Would you want to work with me? And I was like, yeah. As mentioned, my entire career owes its existence to Cracked, so I was more than happy to, at the very least, hear the guy out. And over the course of, just a couple of email conversations, a few calls, things like that to hammer stuff out, we decided on using the Fact Fiend format with a Cracked twist. So essentially, we're going to make Fact Fiend videos where the twist is it's not that I research the article and I'm laboriously explaining it to a long-suffering but understanding friend, which is sometimes you, Lucas, sometimes Nisha, sometimes Brad, and sometimes guests that we have on the channel. It's going to be the Cracked. It's going to be a Cracked article that was written by that editor for the most part. Sorry, it's going to be a Cracked article that was most of them were written by that editor because he'd also worked behind the scenes doing that as well. And I was going to be the one who was responding to it, and then using just the years of just facts that I have built up in my head to riff on it, much in the Fact Fiend style, where we generally don't stick to any script that we have. We just have a bare bones of an article that I wrote that we then riff on after talking about the pertinent facts within it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that on a usual regular Fact Fiend episode, maybe half of the recording is not talking it's not working off the actual original script. It's either talking about a random tangent that we come up with, or it's, expanding upon the point made in the article or something like that?
Yeah, and it's framed as a conversation between two friends. And
Mhm.
the difference between the cracked crossover we did is like, it's not a conversation with two friends. It is an editor trying to keep you on track, but we're still going to use the same style, visual style at least, that Fact Fiend has developed. Because you know what? It's your visual style.
Mhm.
Like, you spent years building it up to the point now it's recognizable to your audience of about, we have currently like 740,000 subscribers, something like that.
It's roughly about that, yes.
Yeah, at the time it was a bit lower, like 690,000, I think it was at the time they were talking to me, and it's slowly grown since then.
Mhm.
They were even really apologetic when they suggested, using the green screen. It's like, that's your thing. Now, my response was, well, yeah, it's my thing, but I'm in the videos.
Yeah.
So I don't care. It's fine for us to ape the style because it's my idea too. And I'm working with you and I'm in the videos, so I'm happy for that visual similarity to exist.
Well, it becomes a blending of styles then, doesn't it?
Yeah. That's literally the whole fucking pitch. It's it's cracked Fiend. And for that appearance, I am paid $500. That's the amount we agreed to. That's very important, people listening at home. You need to keep that figure in mind. $500 for that appearance. And we don't really need to get into what that money pays for, but I like to frame it as me being paid to sit down and drink a beer for 20 minutes, which will also be important in a moment. But it's not that, is it, Lucas? As one of the people who edits those videos, you can speak to. There's more work than you'd expect goes into making a Fact Fiend video and a cracked Fiend video.
There is, yeah, and just off time alone, it's not 20 minutes. You might record for, say, 20, 30 minutes, but that involves you going to the office. You're currently, we're in lockdown, we're still at that point where we can't all be at the office. So Karl has been setting the whole setup on his own, figuring out his own recording, setting up the camera, making sure it's focused. So doing all that pre-prep, filming it himself, recording it himself, and then obviously doing all the things like getting all the files onto the PC, uploaded, etc. And then we do a raw cut to then upload and get sent over to Cracked to then put their final edits in.
Yeah, it's put their spin on the style, and none of those things are particularly difficult.
Mm-hmm.
We're not trying to say no, it's a really hard job. You don't understand. We're just saying there's more effort than you'd expect goes into making them. There's
not as you frame it, 20 minutes sitting there with a beer. Yeah.
Yeah, I just frame it like that because to a layman that's what it looks like, and I'm it's pretty funny that I'm being paid that amount of money to do something so simple. At least to at first glance.
It's you just taking a humorous spin on the opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that's important to note is that before it even gets to the point where it can be uploaded, 5 or 6 different people have had hands on it. And there's at least a dozen or so hours of work gone into it. It doesn't look like that's happened, but them's the breaks. And of that $500, they're paying me for all that stuff you just mentioned. Not to mention the fact that 690,000 subscribers at the time. The implicit understanding between us when that agreement was made is, we're paying you this amount because you have this inbuilt audience that you can bring over. You've built up this audience over time. You have this style that is recognizable. We want to exploit that. And I guess the word exploit is not really the most accurate one to use because we're both benefiting from it. It's mutually beneficial for us both to utilize that, but I can't really think of a better way to describe it. If you can.
I don't really know a better word, but it is just how collaboration works, isn't it? And it's kind of, as you say, it's just how the world works. It's a package deal. It's not just paying you for the work and, therefore paying you the money to pay us for our work as well. Mm-hmm. It's also just paying you in part for your brand.
Yeah, there's it's nebulous how much my brand is worth, but it does have worth and there is value to it, as evidenced by the fact they reached out to me to make this deal. And with that out of the way, we filmed an announcement video, just saying, hey, yeah, I'm working with Cracked again. They called me, not called. I know they contacted me. They asked me if I wanted to make videos for them. I go into a spiel about, Cracked is the origins of my career. The existence of this site is owed to the foundations built there. I was happy to do it. Plus, they're paying me $500 because I try to be as transparent as I can in regards to financials on the channel.
Yeah.
And that resulted in, because we get comments on videos and like they tend to come in over time. Like generally when a video goes out, you'll get the majority of the comments, but over time, like other comments will filter through.
Yeah, and like you check out the the YouTube studio page for the comments. Like every day you'll just see comments made on like old videos from months or years ago.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I do like every day, because I run the fucking channel. I do have to check the analytics. I have to do behind the scenes stuff, which again is very boring. We don't need to get into.
Mm-hmm.
But whilst doing that one day, I think like last week now, I just happened upon a comment from a dude on that announcement video saying something to the effect of, "Oh, have you gone broke after like go broke, go woke," or something like that, as a allusion to that time I told Trump supporters who watch our videos to fuck off.
And I think just in general, with your attitude to be outspoken about, telling bigots to piss off.
Yeah. I'm not the biggest fan of like bigots watching my content. I really don't like that idea. So I generally tell like bigots, like, don't watch my content. And this dude's obviously very annoyed about that. And then he saw just the video title. And from that title made the assumption that I have had to go back to work for Cracked in like a freelance capacity because the channel is dying.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me felt like a really unfair thing to say. Plus, it pissed me off.
Well, rightly so, because you're there releasing a video celebrating, look, like, I've managed to get to a point where, like, I'm successful enough that Cracked want to work with me as a brand now. Like
they're not asking me. I don't have to just cold pitch them ideas.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's funny as well, right? It's literally the exact opposite. It's not that the channel's dying, it's now that the channel is so successful. Other people are paying me to make the same style videos for their channel because their channel's not successful.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we mentioned in the video is that, we've got more subscribers than you, but because we've been like lapsed for so long, you realistically have the bigger channel reach and audience. So if anything, we're the ones taking advantage of you because you get more views than we do, which is mentioned in the video.
Yeah, and you use like a lot of pronouns. I want to clarify. Karl means like Cracked has more subscribers, but got less views because the channel was essentially inactive for so long, and YouTube like stopped recommending it to people.
I appreciate that, Lucas, because as mentioned, I'm trying not to say specific names here for reasons that again will become abundantly clear for anyone who wants to sit through this entire thing, and I hope that they do, especially before they comment or leave a pithy comment on Twitter at least, or like send me a direct message, which again we'll get into. But yeah, I saw that, and as I want to do, if you've listened to this podcast, you'll know that I on occasion will just leave pithy responses to comments like that and then just pin them on the video because fuck it, I can.
Mm-hmm.
And the response that I made was something to the effect of, I get paid $500 to sit and drink a beer for 20 minutes. What do you do for a living?
Yeah.
And, we've discussed there's more work goes into it than that, but to a layman watching, it's 20 minutes of work sitting in front of a beer. And even like if you add in all the extra stuff we have to do, it's still a real fucking cushy gig.
It really is, yeah. And again, we want to reiterate that is because like there is a brand appeal in the Fat Fiend name, and that's what part of the payment is for. Yeah,
and like it's a real fair amount of compensation for what to me doesn't feel like a lot of work, but like the value there is like it's the work that I've already done.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's not the fact that the work is hard. It's like you've spent 3 years building up a brand. That was the difficult part. The difficult part's already been done.
Then you've been writing for
10 years.
10 plus years, to then build up that audience, to then have the Fat Fiend name become big. And it's a lot of things coming together to pay off for your hard work.
Yes, it's like whilst the actual job itself is easy, the what you're not seeing is like the point, the amount of effort that went in to get to that point. And I saw that and I just screenshotted those 2 responses and posted them on Twitter again, as I'm wont to do. I do that frequently with just weird smarmy comments we get, or just ones that are just generally unpleasant.
Yeah.
And usually it'll be accompanied by me dunking on them in the comments. That's something I'm able to do because I run everything in regards to Fat Fiend.
Mm-hmm.
Fat Fiend has no corporate sponsors. It has no corporate overlord besides Big Wangers Incorporated, a company that I own.
I don't know, Karl. That sounds pretty sketchy.
It does, doesn't it? It's almost like the tax system is broken, but my accountant told me that, hey, Karl, this is the way things work. And I guarantee that any other big YouTuber with an audience sizable or comparable to ours in size or larger is also incorporated as a corporation or business.
I mean,
like,
Karl,
you're a business, aren't you?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I barely have in comparison, I have a very small YouTube following, and even I had to have a company for it.
Yeah, because it's just, no, that's the dumb thing. That's like, no, besides the point. But yeah, I put that tweet out with just that response, that pithy, just me going, I get paid $500 to drink a beer. The fuck do you do? Because you know what? I'm proud to be at a point now in my career where websites I used to write for, that I literally acknowledge as being like, no, the reason my career is this, they're coming back to me to ask me to help them. Mm-hmm. That's a real nice feeling.
And for anyone that still thinks like, oh, Karl is getting overpaid or whatever, I just want to point out, like, yeah, obviously it's not the best comparison, but imagine like appearance fees for a celebrity to show up for like 20 minutes on something.
Yeah.
And
I don't like thinking of myself like
chat.
That.
And I'm not saying that, like, yeah, you're on that level or anything, but yeah, just that's a maybe like more normal example people can think of.
Yeah, it's like, it's a good comparison. If people think I'm being overpaid for that, like, that's your prerogative. Like, I thought I was being overpaid as well, because I was initially offered more money and I turned it down. Because I was asked, can you quote a price that you think? And when they offered me $500, I just said yes. But during the conversation, like, we might be able to get more. I said, no, $500. If that's what you think is fair, that feels fair to me. That will let me pay my editors the usual fee that I do, and then have a little bit left over for the channel's coffers.
And bear in mind, like, $500 is probably more than those YouTube videos are going to make.
Yeah, which was acknowledged in the conversations we had. But the idea was, if those videos got to the point where they were getting the views cracked videos did previously, or even to the point where they're getting the same views that videos on Fiend get, but with Cracked being a bigger brand than I am, they can get better brand deals and better CPM, is it?
Yeah, which is just like the amount of money per 1,000 views.
Yeah, the understanding there was like, these videos are going to like run at a loss for a while, but the hope is, if with the combination of our two brands and Crack's reach and place in the industry, and the fact we've got a massive corporate overlord who can work out deals on our behalf, eventually they're going to make more than that. And then we had a tentative what is it now, profit sharing agreement. Just like a handshake deal on any money it makes over $500, and will be split straight down the middle between like us and you. And then my deal with you guys behind the scenes was like, any money I get from that will similarly be split 4 ways between you, Brad, Nisha, and the channel. Because that's something like I guess you can speak to is when I split stuff down the middle, I don't take my cut. I take the channel's cut, and then I pay myself a wage from the channel.
Yeah, because you just pay yourself. As far as I'm aware, anyway, the way it's always seemed to me is that you pay all of your money into big wangers, and you just take a set wage every month regardless.
Yes, as its managing director. Mm-hmm. And so when we make deals like this, like, the actual money doesn't really matter to me. I get paid the same regardless of what the channel makes.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, if the channel starts to lose money, that's when things would become troublesome, and when I potentially have to think about, okay, I'm going to have to start cutting costs, which might mean paying myself less. It might mean, making less content. But that's, again, besides the point, it's something we can discuss at a later date. But,
yeah.
So far, Lucas, what's the story? Because I have a tendency to waffle and go on tangents.
I mean, pretty much so far, it's just we've gotten to the point in the story where you have screenshotted both of those comments and put them out on Twitter.
Yes, and probably I thought no more about it because, I tweet all the time. Social media is so disposable. And comments especially as well. Who gives a fuck? Put that out, thought nothing of it. Mm-hmm. And something apparently that was going on behind the scenes. Because this is one of the things that I didn't realise what I'm about to say was happening until I was informed by that aforementioned editor. And it was that a former writer for Cracked, who I'm not going to name, because it's already been framed as me harassing and trying to dox this person. So I'm not going to name them because I just don't need that hassle or people trying to frame this as me attacking them again. So Lucas, do you have a female name that just is an ex you don't like, or an old friend or something like that?
Don't really have any exes, to be honest.
Okay, just a woman's name. What's
Helen.
your woman's name? Helen. Okay, so Helen. We're going to call this lady Helen. who is a former contributor for Cracked and current contributor to like many other places online, retweeted quote tweeted just that series of exchanges about me being paid $500 to sit and drink beer, which, as we've established, is like a simplification of the actual work that goes into it, which lay people probably wouldn't know, but you'd think somebody in the same industry would know.
Mm-hmm. And like, I just want to reiterate, like, if someone, because obviously people will have been able to figure this out or have seen it happen already.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you know who this Helen is, like, again, just leave them alone. Like, this is not a call of point for action or anything. This is just like Karl trying to explain his side of the story.
Yeah, I'm just trying to do a rundown of what went on from my perspective, because we're going to get to it is just taken on a life of its own. And so this person, Helen, they retweeted that, and they said, and I'm going to quote them verbatim here, that's hilarious because they offered me $50 for a 10 to 15 page script. Hey guys, why don't you think there aren't more women? Sorry, hey guys, why do you think there aren't more women in comedy? Probably just because we're not funny, right? And Lucas, just just reading that or hearing that at face value, thoughts so far?
Well, if I read that tweet, rightly so, I'd be like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, why is this man getting paid? Yeah, this man's getting paid $500, 10 times what you offered a woman for seemingly more work. Because if you compare 20 minutes of drinking beer and talking to a 15-page script, like that does sound fucking bullshit.
Yeah, like $50 to research and write an entire 10 to 15-page script is ridiculous. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, and it sounds so ridiculous that there has to be something else going on here, right?
You would hope so, but knowing the world of writing, that isn't necessarily the case. But yeah, like you would hope so.
Yeah, and it turns out, Lucas, that there was something else going on here because, like as I said, unbeknownst to me, like this was going on because I don't have like notifications on for like quote tweets or anything like that because I don't care.
Right. Yeah.
Like the only thing I care about is direct messages and stuff to me because like that's what impacts my brand. So unbeknownst to me, this had started like an entire like conversation about Cracked and me, by extension, being sexist because what the fuck's going on here? You're paying a guy 10 times what you offered a woman. And the editor that I mentioned previously just went in to the this tweet and responded, just breaking it down. And Lucas, I believe that you are aware of this because you got tagged in it, yes?
Yeah, they tagged me in it just as like one of the tweets was like, part of the money is used to pay editors like
Lucas,
Canto Legend, like me, yeah.
Yeah, and Lucas, just from your perspective, because obviously you saw this tweet, you saw the breakdown. Like what did the editor say? Like, just give us the gist of what they said.
I've not got them in front of me or anything. I'm like going.
I'm trying to look for them now.
Off the dome at the moment, but it was roughly that. Look, we asked Karl to make a video with us, which requires like filming and making sure that everything gets edited, blah blah blah, and that's where I got tagged in. Also, we work with a woman who gets paid the exact same rates for their episodes that we work on them with, and then another like part to it was the person who quote tweeted you, Helen, like you didn't get offered to make a video for $50. We offered you $50 to like make a light edit on your original article. Yeah, and that's the pertinent piece of information. That's like, the next part of this story. Because I said I did not know this was going off until that editor messaged me and apologized. I'm really sorry if your mentions look like shit right now. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, oh, there's an argument going on. Did you not see? And I clicked. They sent me a link to it. It's obviously they quote tweeted me, but they didn't tag me in it. And people responding didn't tag me, so I didn't see any of this. And then he sent me the link to his breakdown, during which, as you mentioned there, and he clarified that this person, Helen, they were not being offered $50 to write an entire 10 to 15 page script. They were being offered $50 to edit a script they wrote for use in the video, to be turned into a video. Yeah, the point was kind of like, oh, this was written for crack.com can you just make a light edit to make it work better for video.
Yeah, and that's something I've done in the past. Like, I worked for Today, I found out I literally did this job. I would take articles that I'd written and then, like, just tweak them slightly so they'd be, like, better for being read out loud. Because stuff that sounds smart written down doesn't exactly sound great when it's read out loud.
Not always, no.
Yeah, and, I lost my train of thought there. I had a point. Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah. And Lucas, like, this is something that's obvious to me. As, I've got a decade of experience in this industry, so just forgive me for making it, if it sounds simple to me. But I'm just going to ask you a question now. Is editing an article different from appearing in a video?
Very, very different, yeah.
So they're different things?
They are different jobs, yes.
So they're different jobs?
Mm-hmm.
And as different jobs, would you expect them to be compensated differently based on a variety of factors?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know that, Lucas, as someone who's worked in this industry. Admittedly, you do work in this industry, but in a far more limited and niche role, and it's been for less time, yes?
Yeah, totally.
But that's something that you know.
Mm-hmm.
That they're different jobs.
Yeah.
And they're paid differently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm just going to let that sit. That they're different things that are paid differently. So with that in mind, Lucas, would you say it's disingenuous to compare the two?
Yeah, I would. And, I still want to clarify, like, maybe they saw that one comment and went, what, he gets paid $500 for sitting around for 20 minutes? Like, you wanted me to do seemingly a similar amount of work
in their head
and get paid $50.
Yeah, and, like, you know what? If they thought that, that's on them. I don't know how they reacted.
We don't know how Helen thought at all.
No,
but
we don't.
I just want to put out there and play devil's advocate of, like, even if they read it at face value, like, it is different jobs, but I can see why they'd be pissed off.
But also, as well, this is a person who's been in the industry and I'm not sure if they've been writing longer than me, because I believe they started writing for Cracked after I left the website, but they could have written for other websites before that. But let's say they've been in the industry for roughly as long as I have.
Mm-hmm.
They must know that. They must know that content creation, it wears many hats. And they've worked, presumably, like myself, in many different areas of that industry, from just writing articles to editing articles, to just doing just general behind the scenes stuff. So they must be aware that there's different things expected and required to create content. Like, none of them are more important than the other, but because an article, a video can't get made without a script.
Not always.
No.
There's
our videos get made without a script, basically. But you need a script to make a video. So they're both important roles, but they are different roles and they're compensated differently. We talked earlier, the compensation that I'm paid. It takes many things into account.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone thinks that's too much, that's their prerogative. And if someone thinks the compensation that Helen was offered was too little, that's also their prerogative. But here's the thing: as you mentioned, Lucas, they were being offered this money. As clarified by the editor who originally reached out to them, mm-hmm. You weren't just being offered $50 to write an entire script, which is how they framed it.
Mm-hmm.
You were being offered $50, which, again, people can say is too little if they want, but you were being offered this to edit an article you wrote and have already been paid for.
Yeah, so, to clarify, this is an article they wrote for Cracked.
Yes.
So Cracked already own that and could...
And have already paid them for it.
They paid them in full for it, whatever the going rate was at the time, and they very much are in the right to just straight up use that as a video script themselves without ever contacting them again.
Yeah, and Cracked does have in-house people who could have done that edit. And as the editor who made this thread explained, as the person in charge of revamping the video part of the website, I felt obligated to reach out to the original author.
Mm-hmm.
I reached out to the original author, to make you the offer to edit this video, because I wanted you to have first dibs on doing so, because it's your article. They also clarified in this thread that the editing work required was minimal and is not at all what you're framing as 15 full pages of work. It is you need to copy paste it into a Word document and just tweak some words. Like, he even clarified, if you would have copy pasted it into a Word document and sent that to me, I would have paid you.
Mm-hmm.
This was being done as, like, out of a sense of obligation to you as the original writer. And,
essentially a courtesy call.
Yeah, and they confirmed that I did the same thing with other people. Male and female writers made them the same offer. And some of those writers took that offer, some of them turned it down. And those writers who took that offer are now being paid more after they had a conversation with the editor and they agreed that the work being done, the compensation did not feel fair.
Mm-hmm.
So they're now being paid like $100. And some of them are even in talks to have their own spin-off series turned into videos for which they might make starring roles or, work in a more prominent capacity on them, earning more money still.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that, fair enough, if they're getting paid more, maybe the original $50 offer was a bit low, but even then, again, they were framing that $50 offer in a very different capacity.
Yeah, they were disingenuously framing it. And one of the things that I didn't realise until it was pointed out to me by my girlfriend is, because she asked, how much do you get paid for writing an article for Cracked? I went, I don't know. And when I left, the going rate for a frequent contributor was $250 an article. I'm not sure this person get paid. The average went from $100 to $250. So at minimum, it was probably like $150 that had been paid in total if they took that offer. At most, it would have been $300. And if it was the upper end of that, if they'd been paid $250 for the original edit and writing of the article and then $50 for that edit, they would have technically been being paid more than me. Because as mentioned, I give half the money straight away to you, the editors, to edit the video and then take the $250 and put it into the the Fact Fiend coffers.
Mm-hmm.
So realistically, they'd have been paid more than me, which I just found amusing if they were being paid that top white offer.
Yeah.
But you know what? So we've clarified so far. So Lucas, what's going on so far? Because there's other things that we need to mention here. Which if you can help me, like you do in Fact Fiend videos, where are we? What page are we on?
Where are we? So you've posted the screenshots. They've quote tweeted you, and then the editor from Cracked has responded with a thread explaining a bit of a breakdown.
Yeah,
the pay and what was required from each role.
And I would frame that thread as a complete asshole blowout because they broke down everything they said as being completely wrong. You are disingenuously, Helen is disingenuously framing this and trying to put it forward as sexism. You're accusing us of being sexist. And you mentioned earlier, one of the things that's mentioned in this thread is there is somebody else we contacted to create videos like Karl is doing for us. And they are also being paid $500 and they are a woman.
Mm-hmm.
There is literally a woman being paid the same amount for the job Karl is doing.
And I don't think they would have felt that necessary to point out, apart from the fact that they framed this originally as, this is why women can't be in comedy.
And I'd like to point out as well, the person saying this is a prominent woman in the comedic industry who still cites Cracked as one of the reasons you will know their name.
Mm-hmm.
Their Twitter profile literally says, you might, I think their website says, you might recognize my name from Cracked.
Okay, yeah.
Which is just one of those, just those little bits of irony of why aren't there more notable female comedians on the internet? Says notable female comedian, framing it as this website's dealings that are doing this.
Yeah.
It's when you owe, like myself, basically your entire career to this website that gave you that platform. But anyway,
I just want to take a side note to say, I think it would be unfair to not mention this. I am very aware that pay discrepancy between men and women is very real.
Yeah. The pay gap is real.
The pay gap is real, and the lack of female representation in higher up jobs is very poor.
It is, yes.
I'm not saying that there's no misogyny within general industries, and especially and
in comedy there is, yes, too. In comedy there is a definite 100%. There is 100% sexism in this industry, but in this case that was not what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
As evidenced by the fact that other people were offered the same amount that she was, men and women, and the offer that they think I'm being offered, that seems unfair, and they're framing as being given to me because I'm a man, was also offered to a woman who's been asked to do the same thing. And I've like thought about this for a couple of years. I've tried to put like an analogy for it for people who may be like, not too into like the world of writing, like comedic writing, which is admittedly a niche thing. So I thought of a messy metaphor, if you'd like to go on this messy metaphor with me, Lucas, before we continue.
Okay, sure.
And like the metaphor I thought was like, we both worked in bars, right?
I mean, I've worked on a restaurant.
Service so you've worked in a service industry, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so let's pretend now that you are Helen. And like, instead of being a comedic writer online, she works in a bar. And let's just say like I'm in this position, I'm going to be like the editor. And like I'm going to be the boss or the manager or the supervisor of that bar. And let's say, Lucas, like you come in and you work a full day shift. You do a full shift at this bar. And you're paid for that full shift. And at the end of the shift, I come to you and I say, look, I know your shift's over. I know you're putting your coat on. I can see that you're about to like walk out the door. But could you just stay behind for a bit longer and help me tidy some stuff up? Like, I can ask somebody else to do it, but since you're here and you know the bar better, like, because obviously you've been here with all the stuff that's going on today, you're the person best suited for that job. I'll pay you more for doing it. I'll give you a bit extra money. I'll chuck like, an extra 20 quid onto your pay packet this week. Could you just do me that favour? Right, and so far, I think that's like, an apt comparison.
I mean, it's something that's happened to me many a time.
Yeah, but as well, like, it's the apt comparison. Like, you've been paid for this work, and would you like to stay on and do a little bit of extra? Like, we know you weren't, like,
You've been paid in full for your shift, but I just need this extra little nitpick from you, like,
Yeah, and I will pay you for doing that extra work. And in that situation, like, there are a number of things that you can do in response. Like, you can say no, and just go home. You can say, that's not my job, which is not. You can say, it's not my job, and then say, I want more money, which again is an option people have, because that's what happened with some of the people who did take that offer. They took it and then realised, like, there's more work than expected here. I want more money.
Yeah.
Like, they took that. And, all those options are valid. But I think the thing here is, like, I don't think any reasonable person hearing about that interaction would say that the boss is not, at the very least, being fair.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Like, you can argue that, like, they should have offered more money, but, like, it's a pretty fair offer, all things considered. It's like, you're here, it's like, it's the work you did, you just want to stay a bit extra for a bit more money. You can say no, but I thought I'd ask you since you're here and you know it best.
Yeah.
And in that vein, Lucas, I imagine, like, you're Helen, you go home, and you, like, go on Facebook, and you just, like, put a message out there saying, I can't believe my boss just asked me to do a full shift and tidy down the entire bar for 20 quid.
Would you tidy down the bar after the shift?
Do the full shift.
Oh, right, I get what you mean now, yeah.
And they offer me 20 quid to do a full shift and tidy down the bar. Would you say that's an unfair and not an inaccurate summary of the events that just transpired?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Just like an inaccurate summary of what happened. Yeah,
and similarly, they've been offered money to do it, but they're framing it as, I'm going to create an entire article from scratch. Saying, no, that's not an accurate representation of what you've been asked to do here, and it's unfair to say so. And now let's just imagine, Lucas, when you put this down, like, and me, like the boss, just goes like, the fuck are you doing? And tries to clarify in your mentions or like the comments, like, I didn't ask you to do the entire shift for 20 quid. I asked you to stay on extra, and you said no. And then I got somebody else in to do it. You are not being fair here.
Yeah.
Like, are you following the comparison? Like, that's the thing. Like, I'm worried about this, like, this metaphor.
It is a bit messy, but yeah, I get what your point is. Like, this is just the place for, like, where the editor at Crack comes in and just gives that, like, nice thread breaking down what happened.
Like the asshole blowout of, that's not how it went down. And I know that you know that because you were there.
And I, honestly, I said, I got mentioned in this just as a clarification of, like, look, part of the money goes towards editors like me. Part of that $500 that Karl is paid. And I looked at that thread and went, okay, yeah, it looks like he's done a good job explaining everything.
Yeah. And let's just imagine that, like that. You're there and you say, well, no, I've got a gotcha here. I've got a gotcha. You have a DJ that comes to this bar and you pay them $500 or 500 quid to do a DJ set, and your response to that is, that's a DJ set. That's a completely different job. I don't get what your point is.
Mm-hmm.
They're completely different things that, require different skill sets for which you are compensated according to, what that skill, like the effort needed to, acquire that skill set, or that's, how it should be.
Yeah, and for example,
in this thing, I'm the DJ, by the way.
Yeah. And like they are totally different skill sets, and if you think, well, it's not fair that like a DJ gets paid more for a set than a worker does for a full shift, that's just kind of like the going rates. And generally speaking, being like an on-video presence pays better than being a writer.
Yeah, and you can say that, again, we're not saying that the pay here, the pay is completely incidental to what we're talking about. You can argue that it was like the DJ's been paid so much or the staff is not being paid enough. But the fact of the matter is, they're different jobs and they're compensated differently. It is disingenuous to compare the two as if they are the same, because they're not. And then imagine if you started accusing your boss of were you being sexist? Because, and then again, you framed it in this this thread on your Facebook where only your friends are seeing it, and your boss is trying to state their cause that, why is it that the man gets to be a DJ when me, the woman, has to stay behind the scenes and clean up? And then your boss is like, the fuck are you talking about? We've got 2 DJs and the other one's a woman and they're paid the same amount. The fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
And that can lead us. And then imagine, Lucas, your response to that is, look, I'm not going to talk about this anymore. I don't feel that I need to defend myself in this situation. Because that can lead us to what happened next.
Well, I was going to point out, to clarify, this breakdown of a thread of what happened was not responded to by Helen at all.
No, she did not respond to it, this is why I am more inclined now to believe that it's not that they made a mistake, it's that they are being deliberately disingenuous, either because they're too proud or because they just realise that they've backed themselves into a corner now and they framed it as they've gone for this sexism angle.
Mm-hmm.
And that started to gain traction, as we'll get to in a moment, and they can't back down now, so they have to keep doubling down. Because, again, I did not see any of this, and this is where my girlfriend enters the picture. Because my girlfriend, God bless her, when I have things like this of just drama, for lack of a better term, online, she's usually the person who's like, look, Karl, it's not a big deal. Forget about it, and I will generally run my responses to this stuff past her. And it's like, does this seem harsh? This might seem like a dig, and she'll look at it and go, it's fine, or don't post that, and I won't. In this situation, she came to me like, have you seen what she's fucking saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I went, no, I've been working. What's going on? And again, I'm going to read this quote verbatim. This was a couple of days afterwards, or I think maybe the next day. After, as you mentioned, the editor made this thread blowing her arsehole out and explained you are wrong. You are misrepresenting what went on. It's not fair. Here's a full detailed breakdown of how this actually went down that they did not respond to, whilst simultaneously responding to everyone saying this is bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe they treat a woman like this. It's but we're not. And this is the point where I start to feel bad for the editor, because they were trying really hard. Of look, it's not this. We pay another woman the same thing that Karl gets paid, and I offered the other writers who took the offer more money because I felt bad. Mm-hmm. I'm really sorry. Is there any way we can work this out? It's just ignored.
Yeah.
And then just a day later, they said, and I quote, I put myself in a bad position here where I have to now try and publicly arbitrate why I think I deserve to be paid a decent wage for my work, and I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to. I said what I said, and I'm not deleting it. If someone feels they need to mine my old work for material, best of luck to them. I'm out there making fresh new comedy. Good night. And Lucas, thoughts so far?
It seems bad to me that they've come out with this statement and thrown multiple people under the bus or in public. And then the moment they try to then defend themselves, you and the editor from Crack, come out and just say, look, this is not how it seems, then it's well, I'm done talking about it now.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about
this. I don't need to
this.
prove about myself It's
Yeah,
like,
I don't feel that I have to justify what I said.
and it's like, but that thing that you said is now affecting multiple people.
Yeah,
And their
including me.
potential, like, jobs and careers.
Yeah. Like, the thing is, this is where I need to point out, like, I'm not upset about this. Like, my girlfriend is, and she's real fucking mad about it. Like, I'm not upset. The reason I'm annoyed is because it started to fall, like, the fallout had started to come, like, this is where the fallout started, and it started to spill out onto this editor who was just trying to do their job, and that's why I feel bad about it. Like, 'cause this editor is getting shat on and accused of being a sexist. Like, and like, by proxy, I am as well, because I'm involved in this situation. And that just doesn't feel good, especially, like, as I hope we've clarified by now, there is no element of that. If anything, like, it shows that we were treating her really fairly, because at no point did, like, either of us treat her differently, because we were treating her as a peer. She was being treated as a peer in the industry, and we, or at least I think the editor, when they made that really detailed breakdown, was hoping that as a peer in the industry, they would understand that and realize, look, there's more going on here than, like, you're saying to your audience. And I know that you know this because you've worked in this industry too. And it's really not fair for you to frame it this way, as it's like you're being paid less because you're a woman, because you're not. You're being offered the same as other people. You can say that amount's not fair, but to frame it like this, that's not.
Yeah, exactly.
And rather than acknowledge that, as I said, they responded to every person, or most of the people responding to them, saying, oh, this is bullshit. I can't believe, like, us women are still treated like this, but then ignored the response from the person. The only other person who has any background, like, actual, knowledge of the situation, breaking it down.
Yeah, the only person they actively, seemingly ignored was the one other person involved.
Yeah. And that's where, like, I start to get annoyed, because it's like, but you're wrong. Like, you're not framing this fairly. You're still leaning into the fact that you're being paid less because you're wrong. You're framing it as if, like, I have to defend wanting to be paid a fair wage for my work because I'm a woman. It's like, that's not what's happening here.
And even if, as I mentioned earlier, like, even if you feel like you were being, like, undercharged for your work and they were, offering a poor rate, like, that should be a different conversation than, like, being sexist, because you were being offered the exact same rate as everybody else being offered that work. Yeah,
and it's your prerogative to turn that down, which they did, which brings us to, my role in this story. Because for the most part, so far, I've been pretty, I've been talking about it a lot, but, for the most part, I've been pretty, passive. Yeah. I was involved in this story, but, my involvement was I tweeted something out that then got retweeted. And then that started, like, a whole cascade effect of, people shitting on this poor dude just trying to do his job, and me by extension. And I think when the original thing broke down, I, tried to, I think I mentioned, look, this is not a fair representation of what's going on. Also, I don't appreciate, the shade being thrown here, that I don't deserve that money. I've worked for 10 years to build the audience that I have, and that's one of the reasons I was paid so much. We've talked about, haven't we?
Yeah.
But for the most part, my role in this was pretty passive. And then while speaking to this editor, I was just, trying to, just pick their brains. Like, why are they, going so hard on this? Why are they going so hard on this angle? Because I was just baffled. Like, you explained yourself. Like, why are they, still trying to insist that it's this? This is the reason that it's happening, when, you've explained it and you've, got receipts to show that. It's not what they're saying it is.
Yeah.
And that resulted in us having a conversation where he revealed, I never got a good vibe from this Helen anyway, because, when I reached out to them, in the same way that I reached out to you, they were just, really fucking smarmy in a way that was amusing. Especially considering that, their reach online is a fraction of what yours is. And when I reached out to you, you were incredibly humble and modest about it. Because I was like, oh yeah, shit, yeah, let's work together. It sounds awesome. And that might be because of the fact that I was offered more money.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
To them, it was still amusing that a person was like, look, we've got an old article of yours, we're going to turn into a video. Do you want to just do, some basic editing work on it for $50? they were like, I am better than, like, they responded in a way that's basically like, I am better than this. And I asked them, well, what do you mean they responded like that? And they sent in a message to me what I read as a paraphrasing of what had been said in their initial email interaction.
Right, okay.
And again, I'm just going to read this verbatim. So one more second here.
Yeah.
So this is in response to the message of like, oh, hey, we've got this job. We've got your article. I thought, as a courtesy, I reached out to you, the original author, $50 to edit it. If you're interested, let me know, sort of thing. And they responded, in this, what I assumed was like, a paraphrase recollection of it. Thanks for thinking of me, but I'm too experienced at this point to be working for $50 a script. Even if it's based on my old research, I'm making $50 an hour for social media work and $50 a page for a comic book scripting job I just started, so that would be a considerable step back for me. Plus, I'm not sure our comedic sensibilities align. And Lucas, just thoughts on that?
Well, there's two ways of reading that, right? It's
there are,
like,
yes.
Look, the first way of reading it is like how it sounded there, where you read it very straight and just, look, I'm earning more money than that is worth to me right now. Like, I don't want to do that anymore. The other way of reading it would kind of be like that. Well, I'm above this work.
Yeah, and that's the way I read it now with everything else that's gone on, especially considering their response to, I didn't get paid $500, what the fuck? Because the way to read that, when you combine those two things, the only real way to read it is they think they deserve that amount of money too for their work.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how else to read it. Like, if someone else reads it a different way, I'm sure they're going to let me know. But with those two things in mind, I can't read it as any other way. Like, they think they are the hottest shit in the world, and they deserve that amount of money too.
And again, like, that might not be the case, but it doesn't leave me with the best impression when the first thing that they did was jump to, like, they are being sexist.
Yeah. Like, they're offered when their response to like being offered a wage is like, I earn more than this. Like, it's not even worth like getting out of bed. I won't scratch my ass for this amount of money.
When it could have just been a simple like,
no.
Thanks for the offer, but I'm all right.
And that's tone policing their response, and that is like, women do have to struggle with that a lot. So I'm going to use myself as an example here, and I am known for responding very tersely to sponsors. And there are multiple videos on the channel of me being a smarmy dickhead to sponsor, like bad sponsors like Audible and Raid Shadow Legends. I don't speak like that to my peers. I wouldn't like, and that's one of the reasons like that. This editor was just, he brought it up. It's like when I reached out to you, I was not even expecting a response because like your channel was like, so successful. I didn't even think you'd want to give a shit. Like, you've not worked for the site for a decade now. I didn't even think I'd get a response, and you responded in like half an hour and was really excited and enthused about working together and was like really hands-on with the project that I suggested.
And again, that if you want to see it as like, well, Karl was only that way because it was like easy money, you can see it that way. But like at the end of the day, from my experience with you, you are, as you say, like very what would you say, terse with sponsors that are bad. But like generally speaking, when you're talking to others that you have respect for, like, you are very polite. Yeah,
my peers. I think that way. And this is why I have to hold my hands up. Because as said, I read this as a paraphrasing of a conversation that they had. And I screenshotted that paraphrasing of the conversation because we were talking on Discord.
Yeah.
And I put that out online because I'm like, this is just a funny addendum to me. Because with all the other stuff that's gone on, like, this really does colour the entire conversation that's going on right now. When, like, it's when you know that the person's immediate response is to, like, just look down on it. And, like, in a way of, like, I am above this. Because I don't know how else you can read that.
That
is get
your
paid
reading
more
of the situation, yeah.
Like, and that's the way you read it with everything else that's gone on. And not to mention as well the thing of, like, I don't think our comedic sensibilities align, as they continue to cite Cracked as an influence for their style and the reason that you know them, and write for websites that ape Cracked style.
Regardless of like how you want to read it, that lines like that are unnecessary. If you just want to say no, say no.
Yeah, and again, like, that's tone policing, and like, I know women do suffer with that a lot, but I'm not speaking here because she wants to speak as a peer.
And
using
that's
myself
why
as
I am being cautious here and doing my best to play devil's advocate, because I know that this genuinely is a problem.
It is, yeah. But that's the way I read it, and I read it as a paraphrasing of a conversation they had. I put that out, and then about 2 hours later, the same thing happened where I got a message off this edit of like, can you please take that down? And I was like, what do you mean? I pulled that out when I was at work, and they're like, yeah, they're saying that you're trying to dox them. What? Yeah. They're now saying that you leaked their private correspondence and that you're trying to dox them and harass them off the internet. I'm getting emails from the people that are sharing this story. Can you please take that down? And I did, at their behest. And they also asked me, can you just not say anything? And whilst I had no formal agreement to do that, because I'm a contractor for Cracked, or I was a contractor for Cracked because I'm not anymore, which we can get to in a moment. I stayed quiet and I won't say anything because you asked me to.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. It is just like okay, I'll leave this situation.
And I'll hold my hands up, and this is where I'll say, I did that. I took that screenshot. I shared it online. I will own up to the fallout and repercussions from doing that, which has happened now. I am no longer associated with Cracked in that way, and I can get to the detail of that in a moment. But yeah, I will own up to doing that, and yeah, I did it. I don't think the way it's being framed is fair, because as mentioned, it immediately got framed as I am trying to dox and harass this person. The word dox carries a lot of very negative connotations.
Yeah, very much. And Cade is just.
Yeah, he's agreed. He's barking in agreement of yes.
Yeah, there we go. So yeah, I think a delivery's just arrived at my door. So obviously, Cade's someone's invading the house.
He is, yes. And do you know what? Someone would be able to invade your house really easily if you dox them and posted their address online. It's I'll hold my hands up. I didn't realize it was an exact verbatim quote from that person. As I said, I thought it was a just paraphrased recollection of it, and that was their private correspondence, and I shared that online, and that is wrong.
Yeah, fair.
And I did something wrong. I will take what the repercussions are. Those repercussions have been that my deal with Cracked has fallen through. I'm not going to be working with them in the future, and I'll get to the details about that in a moment. But yeah, it being framed as, and this is the thing where it goes into what happened initially, where there is context here that is being ignored, which I'm hopefully now trying to provide, where it has now this has taken on a life of its own. And as of this morning, I am getting messages from people saying that I am trying to harass this person off the internet, and there are people saying that Crack's management internally leaked those messages to me in an attempt to discredit and harass and dox this person. That is not the case. I was having a casual conversation with the editor. That conversation, I've described how it happened. During that conversation, they mentioned, oh yeah, they were just really smarmy. I didn't like it. Oh, what do you mean they were smarmy? Oh, this is what they said. I took that, and that's how it's done. But it's now taken on a life of its own.
And presumably that's why we're having this discussion today.
We're having this discussion, yes, because it has spread like wildfire. And I said, I did something wrong, but I don't think it's fair for it to be represented as me trying to dox and harass a woman off the internet.
Yeah, fair.
Because that's really mean.
I'm presuming, as people can hopefully guess from this entire conversation, that you were just kind of putting something out there to try and defend the situation on your side. It
wasn't even that from my side, because I posted it with a pithy comment, which was, if I remember
I haven't
correctly,
seen this to clarify.
Yeah, it was a pithy comment about if anyone ever hears me talking about my work like this, send a search party to find me, because it means I've crawled up my own ass to smell my farts.
Fair enough then, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm generally of the mindset that writing online, especially comedic writing, is not a big deal. It is one of the most disposable, just trivial jobs. I'm glad that I get to do it for a living, but you're not writing Shakespeare. You're not writing high art. You write dick jokes on the internet. And that's been my mindset. And when I saw that breakdown, it just amused me to see somebody take it so seriously and act like they are above the work, at least as it appeared to me.
Mm-hmm.
When, as mentioned during the conversation, it's like, you're like a dozen times more successful than they are, and you don't give a shit.
Fair.
And this led to just, I have been getting harassing angry messages all day. And I could go through a number of them right now, but I think just one that sums this up, that I think just encapsulates the fallout and just the fervour with which people are trying to get to me is, someone just tweeted at me yesterday saying, every time at Karl Smallwood hears the word no, his mass shooting daydream gets one woman longer.
Okay, that's a real jump.
And that is from, you know what, they sent it to me publicly. This person can fuck off, because that's an awful thing to say. That's Riley Black on Twitter. Fuck you. And this is why we are having this discussion in this podcast in the way that I'm comfortable, which is bouncing off of another person.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is no way I am ever going to be able to explain this to a person whose response to it is to infer I have violent misogynistic fantasies about brutalizing women.
Especially not in like 240 characters or whatever.
Exactly,
on
yeah.
Twitter.
And I know for a fact that that person, likely, and all the people who are similarly, just getting annoyed about this, and they're not going to listen to this. They've already made their decision about me. And
I think if you send in a public comment to somebody like that, they probably have already made up their mind about it.
They've already made up their mind, and that's their prerogative. Like, fair enough. I don't think that's fair, but like, you do. And like, you know, I've been getting messages like that all day, and it's led to just some of the things like people saying that I'm, you know, sexist, I'm transphobic, I'm trying to harass a woman off the internet. It's like, the fact she's a woman never came into it for me. I treated her as a peer.
Mm-hmm.
And as mentioned, though, this has drawn the ire of the one person in my life who generally just doesn't give a shit about any of this stuff, and that is my girlfriend, who I've made several mentions to. And I know that the kind of person who's leaving messages saying that I violently fantasize about brutalizing women is going to jump down my throat, mentioning my girlfriend, saying you're just using that as an excuse, or you're speaking for her, or like maybe even like you don't have a girlfriend, you're just saying that. So, honey, you're gonna come through here for a minute, okay? Like she wants to act like. Do you know the bit we have of my girlfriend just yelling off camera?
Okay.
I asked her, like, do you want to do that? And she's like, no, I want to actually like say my piece because I've been really upset about this. So honey, like, you know, just your thoughts so far.
So like, what have you covered? I've
Just
been,
pretty much everything so far.
Okay. Like, first off, I guess disclaimer. Like, you're probably thinking like, oh, his girlfriend. Of course, she's like always on board with whatever he's saying. But like, Karl, you know, sometimes I've been like, that's too far.
Yeah, we mentioned that. Yeah, I said that sometimes I'll run stuff back. Like, that was really mean.
This is not one of those times. Like, this is one of those times I've seen something and it's just like made my blood boil.
Yeah.
First of all, this is blown way out of proportion, and it is so incredibly telling to me, because I imagine you've covered all the different ways that this is upsetting.
Yes,
that
I think.
She has responded to neither you nor in the original thread. Like, once he clarified why there were pay discrepancies, all that good stuff, nothing. No tagging, no responding, nothing. And she's acting like you are bullying her, and I checked because I thought, oh no, what if there's like some weird Fact Fiend fans who like came for her? I cannot find anything. Either she is like that on it with deleting comments, or there has been none. Obviously, I can't see her DM, so I don't know 100%, but there's nothing. There is nothing there. She's just wrong.
Yeah, that's the noise I've heard you make a lot the last few days.
And they find these things so incredibly upsetting, especially when people are saying all the stuff about, like, you being sexist, you being this, you being that, all that stuff, because, like, I pride myself in trying to keep myself and you very well informed on these things.
Mm-hmm. Can confirm.
Yeah,
I'd like to say I've used my platform to be outspoken on a lot of these issues, and just try and just generally say, like, I support women. Like, one of the people who works for the channel is a fucking woman.
Yeah.
Who I've literally given a career in this industry.
Yeah, and, like, I can't think of anybody else in my life who is more supportive of my career than you. And, like, even your support of, like, Melissa and stuff like that.
For context, she is takes rude photos for OnlyFans.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you knew, like, potentially, like, shouting her out could get me demonetized, and you're like, no.
I don't give a fuck.
Yeah. So, yeah. It's frustrating. It is so incredibly frustrating, and I'm sorry that it's turned out this way for you.
Oh, it's fine. It's like we're going to get to the conclusion of how it all went down, and I know the results that it has been for me. But anything more you'd like to say?
Just anything else I would say would just be incredibly rude, and so I just shouldn't say it.
Okay.
But just thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you for letting me rant on your podcast.
It's okay. I knew that.
People can't see the disgusted faces I'm making and, like, looking at you being like, what is this? While I'm flapping my hands.
Yeah, it's fine. It plays well for the audio listeners.
Anyways, good luck with the rest of the podcast.
No problem, dear. Thank you. It's okay. You can slam the door. There we go. So hopefully that came through for you, Lucas. Like, pretty clear.
Yeah, there was a couple of times I think it noise gated a little bit, but that came.
And hopefully it gets picked up on my end for when this gets just edited and put out. But yeah, I thought I'd give her the chance, like, to say that, because I know that the kind of people who are leaving comments and sending me DMs accusing me of being, like, the most horrendous kind of misogynist, like, a mass shooter, are going to, like, just use that as a club to say, no, you don't. Your girlfriend doesn't say that. And one of the things that's really sad, at least, Joe, from a personal perspective about this, is, like, I am generally private about my personal life. I mention my girlfriend on the podcast and stuff, but not too often in stuff that's more public, like videos and things of that nature. And, like, we went to Alton Towers yesterday and we took, like, a really nice photo together. And I was like, I want to share this photo. And then I just looked at my, like, Twitter DMs and saw all these responses. I went, I can't post this because all we're going to get, because we know, like, both me and my girlfriend looked at each other and we'd, like, have that knowing glance of, if I post this photo or tag you in it, all that's going to happen is you're going to get told that you are an idiot for dating me and just told, like, the most vile, horrendous shit is going to get sent your way as a result of this.
Yeah, it would not look the best, like, timing-wise, if you're, like, being accused of being sexist and then you put up a photo like, look,
me and my girlfriend
here's my girlfriend. It's like, no, that's probably a wise decision to not put that up at the moment.
And that's just one of those things where it's like, it would have been nice to share that photo, but whatever. And that brings me to, like you said, it would not be a wise decision, like optics-wise, to do that. And that can bring us all the way to how this is ending. Because this is still an ongoing thing. Like, I'm currently, like, Joe, when I was like, no, just getting all the details, like, I'm having people, like, send me direct messages just saying, like, you're a fucking piece of shit.
And I'm not really involved in this matter apart from, being an editor and whatnot and tangentially being involved. But, like, just please don't send messages to Karl or anyone involved, anyone mentioned in this podcast. Just
well, that's the thing. I'm happy for them to send me messages. And you know what? If someone's
listening
this far...
I'm not, Karl. I'm not.
Thinking,
like, you've been very supportive of me and helping me, like, work for Fiend and stuff. So, like, I want to say that I'm not happy with people messaging you. Yeah,
and that's it. If they they hear all this and they still have something to say about it, that's fair. If you want to have, like, a nuanced discussion about this, like, maybe I'm not going to respond immediately, but you know what? That door is open. If after all this you've got, like, there's still issues, like, after I've held up my hands to like the mistakes and say, I'm going to own the mistake that I made and the repercussions of it. Which brings us to, as said, alluded to multiple times, I no longer have that deal with Cracked. I got a message yesterday just from the editor saying, look, I can read it out in verbatim, just in part. So I've been talking with a bunch of contractors, and the plan for now is to go quietly on a hiatus. Nothing against you personally, and really nobody here at Crack does, but it's too much for us to deal with right now. We're not planning on making a statement or doing anything to exacerbate it further. And I really don't know that you need to either, unless you feel like it's important. I don't want you to feel like we're muzzling you or anything. So that's the only reason that we're recording today, is that guy gave me just the go ahead of, look, I can confirm it's not impacting me, because that was my worry. My worry was that by doing this, I was going to get that guy fired, and that guy does not deserve that, and I would feel fucking horrendous if that was the case. Mm-hmm. I'm happy if I've lost my gig with them, because I said something stupid, I've done something silly, I'm paying for it. But the idea that somebody else would be punished for something that I did, similar to my girlfriend, her getting shit for being associated with me, that's not fair.
Yeah, of course.
You guys getting shit for being associated with me, that's not fair. And I know that as I'm saying this, there is probably somebody, presumably the person sending those vile, awful messages to me, who's framing this as a victory and is likely thinking that I'm really upset about this. And I'm super salty that this deal that I made has fallen through and I'm losing income from it. But to paraphrase the person who started all of this by just being salty that I was getting paid more than them, I really don't care. I get paid $10,000 a month from YouTube. I don't need this gig. I didn't need this gig. It was fun, so I took the offer. Mm-hmm. And I wanted, to express myself creatively in a slightly different fashion, but I don't need the gig. And yeah, Lucas's thoughts. Because I know I mentioned this to you yesterday. It was I'll give you a heads up. And you were like, I'm glad you gave me the heads up, because this would have pissed me off to hear it live.
Yeah, it would have done. And again, not because of the income, because obviously, regardless, Fat Fiend is still doing well, and we're still getting paid to edit Fat Fiend videos, and there's enough to go around for the editors. It's not. That's
the one. Yeah, there's absolutely zero impact on the channel itself. We're losing that $500, but the channel really doesn't need that is, I'm not going to, I never get a chance to toot my own horn about my success. So I'm going to do it. The channel's doing fine. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I make $10,000 a month.
And that's to clarify, that's what the company gets paid, and then it's...
Yeah, that's what the channel makes. I personally don't know, but I own the company that makes that money, so...
Yeah. Just before someone goes, fucking hell, Karl's paying himself $10,000 a month.
It's no, the channel earns $10,000 a month, and you know what? That's enough to give us all a really easy, just cushy gig. Mm-hmm. And, get to hang out as friends. So it doesn't impact the channel in the slightest, but my worry was it was going to impact somebody outside of it. And I really hated the idea.
You've actually put your hands up and said, you did something that you shouldn't have probably said, and you just didn't want, the person over at Crack to then get fired or be in trouble because of what you did.
Yeah, I feel that what I did has been blown out of proportion, and I feel that the initial impetus for this whole thing was disingenuously framed. And that has played its part in this becoming so toxic a situation. Mm-hmm. Because if it wasn't initially framed that way, or if this person would have, or if this Helen, if they would have read that response, because presumably they did, and it's just they didn't like how it made them look, I guess. Because I can't see any way anyone would be able to argue with that, and this has been a meandering conversation, but just that aspect of it, I don't see how anyone could be pissed off about that.
It seems very weird if they haven't somehow seen that thread, even though it was in response to them, and
from the person they were contacted.
Seemingly checking other responses they were getting,
and responding with exasperating, doubling down on the idea this was a result of sexism.
Which hopefully people listening at this point will realise yeah, it wasn't anything to do with that.
Yeah, the fact that they're a woman is completely incidental. Like, no, obviously something has happened that's gone wrong, and I've held my hands up to that. Hopefully, in a way that is satisfactory to people. Like, I'm not going to apologise for what I said and the way it's said, because fuck it, I'm right. This person was being disingenuous in the way they fucking framed this. Because you know what, context fucking matters, and the context completely absolves myself, at least in my opinion, of the fucking accusation of it being sexist.
Mm-hmm.
Like, someone can disagree with me on that one, but I really don't see how you could ever frame it that way from my point of view.
Yeah, whether or not, like, I don't know, I haven't spoken to you about this, but whether or not you now have some kind of like grudge against this Helen, like,
no,
that's on a personal level, but again, it's not to do with sexism.
Like, mate, I don't care. Like I said, I treated them as a peer. I always thought of them as a peer, and something I mentioned, like just on Twitter, is like, the reason this is so frustrating is because I'm seeing other cracked writers, people I know, people I work with, people I looked up to in terms of their thing, just taking this at face value when they know how this fucking industry works.
Mm-hmm.
And just one little personal thing for me that is just really funny. And this is a silly thing, but this is one of those things that just makes me giggle. And it's like, it's that one silver lining on this whole thing. Is one of the former Cracked contributors that is like going the hardest on Twitter about me. Mm-hmm. I still am in contact with a girl they dated back in the Cracked writing days, when I was involved with the forums, and okay. I have it on good authority that they have a small penis. And that's like besides the point. But every time I see this guy going really hard of like, you're a piece of shit, it's like, I know that he has a small penis, and also that according to this girl, like, he was just a really shit fucking person in their relationship. And was like constantly asking them for money and things like that, and was like just a not very pleasant person. Which means that, like, obviously, like, they might not, and which to me is even funny because it doesn't even matter at that point if they have a small penis. The fact that
they were a dickhead.
Yeah, the fact they treated someone so poorly that this woman will just say it as a way to, like, get back at them, makes me giggle. And that's just one of those things, like, when I've seen that, I was looking and go, I know you've got a small dick. Or at the very least, you display small penis energy. So it's the same thing, really. And it's Lucas, like, any final thought. I just wanted to mention that because that's just like to quote myself, an amusing addendum to the story.
I have nothing to say about that bit.
Not that bit, no, but like Joe in general, because I think I kind of like cut you off a little when I said, like, when you first heard the story, you got really, like, you were mad, and like, you said thank you, you were trying to quantify your feelings and stuff.
Just, knowing you for as long as I have done, knowing how we've spoken, like, on the podcast here, like on Fiend, on stream, whatever, like, I would hope that people by now would have realised, like, that you are not sexist, and the fact that you are being framed as sexist for something that, I mean, ultimately you didn't even have a role in the first place. No. You just took a good offer.
Yeah.
But the fact that as well, the person at Cracked, I've only worked with them on, a small handful of occasions, but they seem like a very genuine person that was just trying to do something nice, and they're getting now shot on it for it as well. Like, it's really disheartening to see how poorly this has gone.
Yeah, and like, the fact that it's been framed that way is one of the reasons why it's so frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
And it's why, like, you had my girlfriend on earlier, she's like getting really frustrated because, like, she knows that I agreed, like, I'm not going to say anything. It's like, but they're wrong. It's like, I know. Like, they're like, and this whole thing was started by, like, them misrepresenting women. I was like, I know.
Mm-hmm.
And they know that they're wrong. It's like, they probably do, yeah. But
and again, like, I'm not even asked about, like, not that I'm not asked. I don't really have much anger towards, like, if they were making an argument, I wasn't paid enough, blah, blah, blah. It's just the fact that, like, you're both being framed as being, like, sexist to this. Yeah. Like, this is a very, very different like reason.
And it's an accusation as well
yeah.
that carries like a lot of weight.
It is, yeah.
And it's one that I don't feel is fair. And because as well, it puts me in the unfortunate and unfair position of having to argue from a point where, or argue from a position where I'm defending sexism. It's like, but this is nothing to do with that. It's, you know, it's an industry thing. It was like, you know, a work conversation, like the fact you're always completely internet, especially as well considering that all authors on the site contribute like anonymously and write under pseudonyms.
And yeah, I this is why I found it so difficult to properly express myself today. Like, I hope I've done an alright job because, again, I keep trying to reiterate this. I don't want to make light of sexism. Like,
there are issues with this.
I
and
really
that's
don't want to. Like, sexism is an awful thing. Misogyny is an awful thing. But I just don't think that's what this situation was.
Yeah. And the fact that it keeps getting brought into it, like, again, it puts me in the, like, you know, the unfortunate position of like that I now have to like speak about it. It's like, but it's not something like, you know, it's not an aspect of this scenario. Like, it is something that exists in the industry, and you know, I probably acknowledge for the weird people in the comments going to point like Cracked does have, like, you know, a history of dealing with this with its previous fucking owners, and there were people that were ousted for being like, you know, fucking sexist pieces. It's something we've talked about on the podcast before.
Mm-hmm.
And that resulted in one of the stories about that I told is when I first heard that, I immediately went to the website and like signed to the forums for the first time in years and told them, take my bylines off this website. I don't want to be associated with a website that would do this. I literally put, you know, an aspect of my career. I was willing to wipe out years of my career, you know, while standing up for this.
And I still remember you telling us this back in the day when that happened. Because I remember you just being, I don't want to be fucking associated with that.
Yeah, and that website, you know, it was subsequently something I had to deal with when I started writing for Cracked again. When we made the agreement, which now has fallen through for reasons, that got brought back up. And I think, you know, that same editor explained, look, yeah, that's an issue. We're aware of that. We're trying really hard to, like, you know, help our image. Like, one of the things that I think best shows that is that, you know, we're different owners now. All the people who were involved with those decisions are gone. This is an entirely new management who are aware of that stuff and are very keen to avoid it happening again, which is why, obviously, they're part of the ways with me, because like that conversation's happening again. And like they just can't deal with that. And I understand. It's like, you know, you're a business, you've got to protect your bottom line at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's just a shame that it happened because of this.
It is.
I don't really know how to end this. I don't really know how to end the conversation, or to end, like, you know, just like I'll put a bow on it. Because it's a thing that's ongoing right now. I'd like, no doubt, if I went onto my Twitter and opened it up, I would have people still yelling at me about this.
Yeah, probably. And it's a shame because, you know, I had a fun topic to bring until, you know, you told me of this news last night.
Yeah, so did I as well. I had a couple of things I wanted to talk about that would have been interesting, but yeah, and I know that the same kind of people who are doing that, they're not going to be convinced by this. They've not even listened to this. They've no doubt seen me post this and are now yelling in the responses on Twitter or in the comments arguing. They've not listened, they don't care, they've made up their mind.
And thank you to anyone that, I guess, has stuck like through this conversation. I know it's a lot more of a dry podcast than usual.
It is, yeah, and I apologise to regular listeners of the podcast. But one of the things that I hope is that regular listeners of the podcast will know, or at the very least have had a pretty good glimpse into my personality so far, to know that the accusations that have been made and levelled against me are inaccurate, and I hope that my muddled but I hope accurate recollection of events, you know, because I'm quoting things verbatim about what happened and, like, you know, giving, like, you know, as much backstory and clarification as I can.
Yeah.
That there's at least, you know, some, you're able to, like, draw a conclusion from that, and I'd hope that the conclusion is similar to my own. But at the same time, I'm aware that, you know, as we've mentioned multiple times, this is something that is pervasive throughout the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see how people would feel very heated and, like, you know, just they would have a knee-jerk reaction to seeing something like this.
Totally, yeah. And I would assume that like, you know, a lot of people who have reacted to this have probably experienced something similar to themselves, hence why, like, or, you know, somebody related to them, etc.
Yeah, which is why the response has been like, so vitriolic, and I understand that, and I accept it, and I'm happy for it to fall on my head. Because, like we've talked before about, like, you don't have to mean to hurt someone to hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
And even though, this thing, I believe, is like, we frame disingenuously, like, it is evoking real feelings in people, real emotions. And those have to be acknowledged. And to anyone who has felt those and wants to talk to me about it, and you've listened this far, because I feel like if you've got to this point, you've at least heard my side, and you've given me an hour of your time. If you send me like a DM or something like that, and you just quote, Lucas, give me a nonsense term or sentence.
Here's a giraffe.
Here's a giraffe. If you send me that, like a message with a tagline, here's a giraffe, I'll know that you reached this point, and I'll know that you've given me an hour of your time to listen to what I'm saying, an hour and a half of my time, I should say, to listen to what I'm saying. At the very least, I can give you a couple of minutes of mine. If this is something that's impacted you, you still think that there's something I didn't address, or something that I'm not understanding, or something that I've not just fully acknowledged. So you can do that, and you can find like links below, presumably, on the podcast thing and on my channel where this will be posted.
Yeah.
And I'm curious now about how many of those I'm actually going to get.
I don't know. I don't think many people listen to a full 90-minute podcast as is, let alone one that is about a difficult subject. So I don't know.
And given the responses I've already got on the people who've like angry about it, they're not going to listen for an hour and a half. And I get that. And it's one of those things, isn't it? It's like that old internet thing of like, you need to debate me, but first you need to watch this for hour and a half long videos. I'm not fucking watching an hour and a half long video.
But at the same time, it's especially in a podcast form where, as you say, you wanted someone to talk to about it. It's very difficult to just, put this into context in the space of 5-10 minutes. Yeah,
it'd be impossible to. Like you said, like doing it like there's no way I could provide all this context in 240 characters. And even if I did like, a twit longer thing, do like, a massive thread breaking it down, people aren't going to read that. They're going to see the first one and they've already made their mind up about it. So yeah, if anyone does have any like follow-up or feedback to this and you want me to listen to it, you know what? I owe you that much at this point. So here's a giraffe as a subject message, and I'll know that you're one of the people who listen to this.
Yeah. And thank you to anyone that stuck around.
I thing is though, for one moment, I legitimately thought you meant that, like, just the channel, not just like listening to it. I think I went, thank you to anyone stuck around through these hard times.
No. Thank you for anyone that's just made it to the end of this podcast.
Yeah, like, cheers. That's the thing. It's a weird conversation to have.
It is, yeah.
And it's especially baffling given, like, how small the kernel of it was. You know, that thing like the butterfly effect of me posting, like, pinning a smarmy comment from a guy shitting on the channel has led to this.
Yep. It's a weird series of events, but hopefully next week we won't have to have such a downer of a discussion.
Yeah, or maybe like there'll be a follow up to it if there's any sort of resolution. But I don't feel there's going to be any resolution to this. This feels like something that's going to fade away, and I'm just going to periodically get angry messages from people.
Probably.
Yeah. And it's going to be one of those things where people will just always have it in their head, and the context is not important to them anymore because they've seen the screenshots, they've seen it on Twitter, Lucas. And I don't blame those people for that, because we're all guilty of it. We're all human.
Yeah,
it's human nature to want just like easy to digest answers to questions and to have to view everything in a very binary black and white way. It's
very easy with social media to get caught up in it and spend 1 minute looking at the details and making up your mind rather than, listening to a podcast that is 90 minutes long. Yeah. And it's taken me a couple of days to formulate all of this. Because, it's been an ongoing situation, and for the most part as well, it's been completely unprecedented. It's not a conversation that I ever thought I'd have to have, because I never thought I would ever be accused of sexism
like in a way where it would actually stick, because most of the time you get that it's usually weirdos who just don't like the channel.
Yeah,
and then they know it's a bad thing to say about somebody. And I've always been able to like just laugh that off, because like I know, like how I treat women, I know how I feel about them, and I've used my platform to try and be an ally to them in the best way that I can. And like as my girlfriend mentioned, like I try really hard, and she's like made efforts to educate me about stuff that I'm maybe like not too familiar with, because I'm not. It's not something I can empathise with, because I've never experienced it myself.
Yeah, of course.
But this time,
nobody is perfect. But I'd like to think that you and I and other people are accused of this. Like, obviously, I wasn't, but
that's the thing, by association now.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just like by association of like working with you so closely. Like, I just want to mention that. Of like, yeah, I don't want to think that any of us are, but yeah.